your committee meeting. Could you all stand for our karakia, please? Roa, wha.
Tūtara mai rūra, tūtara mai i raro, tūtara mai i roto, tūtara mai i whalo, kia tau ai te mauti tū, te mauri ora ki te katoa, haune e, hui e, tai kia.
Thank you. Just a couple of house facts. If you could wear your masks, please, when there's members of the public in here. So probably best to wear them right through. This meeting is being recorded and live streamed on Facebook, the Council Facebook page. So apologies, I've got Councillors Brown, Taylor, Wright and Crown. Have I moved Deputy Mayor Brosnan, seconded by Councillor Bogue. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Do I have any conflicts of interest? No. So we have a public forum. Bruce Dalton and Roger Davies from Hawke's Bay Indoor Bowl. So if you could go up to the front there. I've had explained to them that they have 10 minutes and we have question time included in that. Thank you.
Right, good morning. I'm Bruce, Roger. So I have just found out that you don't have our proposal in front of you, which I thought that you were going to have. So my very brief presentation is going to be extended a little bit, and a little bit of that is going to be ad-libbed. I'm the current president of the Hawke's Bay Association Incorporated, affiliated to New Zealand Bowls Federation. Indoor bowls is a sport for all ages and abilities. It's good for exercise, and it gets the older population out and exercising and a lot of social contact. We also have coaching programs in the schools, the three intermediate schools being Napier, Napier and Taradale, and we coach them for 2 terms, and then we have a play-off between the 3 for a trophy that is presented by the coaches a few years ago. Right, our hall is in Onikawa, Wakefield Street. It is 50 years old. It was built with funds raised by a very dedicated group, but it has no insulation in the floors, walls, no ceiling. So we started looking at our finances to upgrading it about 4 years ago, and the work that was needed to attract people to play, as it is freezing in the winter and the heating on it is not very good. So we needed a warmer hall. We also need to keep it cooler on the hotter days, and we get a few of those. We needed wheelchair access. We need accessible toilets. Even our exits don't have ramps currently. So as you can see, there was a lot of work that needed to be done to bring this building up to anything like the standard that we needed for a modern building. The costs we could deal with and the upgrade, no show in this world. So we went out and looked at all the options we could. We went to council, talked to Deborah, and suggested that we found other groups that we could work in with, and perhaps. So we've looked Pettigrew Green Arena, school grounds, Taradale Club, looked at working with the Bridge Club. There was a lot of other options we looked at, and none of these worked for us for one reason or another. And we weren't being picky, but if we're going to go down this track, we need to make this work for us long term. Our hall has other users. Kiwi Seniors use it and the Super Grands marching use it. Both find the hall a great area for their usage, but it's just too cold or too hot. A few weeks ago, there was approximately 200 women from out of our area played in a week-long tournament. At 8 a.m, they were complaining because it was hot. By 10 a.m, they said if we got an ambulance on standby, we're going to faint from the heat. When you count the partners and that and a couple of hundred people in the area for a week, the income is, we're not just a charity really. We have 2 major tournaments, Easter and invitation pairs in October. Both of those tournaments bring a lot of people into our area and they're well sought after to be played in. Unfortunately, we've had to cancel our invitation pairs, which was going to be next weekend. This year, because people coming out of Auckland we couldn't have, and the risks and accommodations that need to be booked in advance, it just wasn't worth carrying on with. We have about 4 rep matches a year here, and each one of those attracts, or we have 3 other teams of 16 players, plus managers, plus reserves, plus supporters. And they're here usually for a weekend, so there's, income coming into the Napier area from those events. The site at Bledisloe Park that we're looking at and would like approval for is at the end of the Outdoor Bowls Club there off Lee Road. It's a good sized piece of land. It has good access. It is close to shops and food outlets. So when we have visiting teams, players and that, we have access to food, and supporters can go shopping, wandering. It's easy to get to from any direction, and it ticked all the boxes, and one of the main ones is parking. Our aim, our current committee, is to have Hawke's Bay Bowls in a financial position and have a well-insulated, new and modern hall to serve the community for the next 50 years. We've had a good 50 years from the hard work that was put in by the fundraisers, and we would like to leave it in the same state for the next. So basically, that's all led to us, trying to get a new hall built, and we can't afford to buy land, sell where we are, buy land and a hall. So, but we can build, and not looking for money, we're just looking for the land. I think that's probably about it from me. I don't know if Roger's got anything he wants to add at this stage, but we're more than happy to answer any questions that we can. Thank you. No? All right, any questions? Thank you.
Councillor Bogue.
Yes, thank you. I have visited your site in Onikawa when the Kiwi Seniors were, looking for space there. Just a couple of questions, and thank you very much for your presentation. Will the other users, like the Kiwi Seniors, be prepared to go out there to Taradale? Because one of the issues that they raised with us is they wanted somewhere sort of close to Napier South and the centre part of the city. And just that question. I've got a couple of others too, but are they prepared to come
At this stage, I can't say yes, they are. Super Grands, I can say yes, they are. But the Kiwi Seniors, no. We haven't really gone down that track with them. There's a lot of things we've got to check up with. What we're looking for is approval in principle to proceed to get consents full plans drawn up and that, but we don't want to, geotech on the land. We don't want to spend the money and go down that track and then find we're not allowed to go onto the land we're looking for. So really what we're looking for is permission to use it, and then we will go down all the tracks and spend the money that we've got to spend that we don't have at this stage, really.
Okay, thank you, that's all.
Councillor McGrath.
Just through the chair, what's the exact piece of land that you're looking at?
Are you looking on Google?
I am.
Okay. The Omaranui Bowling Club,
Yep.
outdoor. At the southern end of that, there is a car park.
Yep.
The southern side of that is a piece of grass.
Yep. 16B, I think it's marked as. Yep. Okay.
Right.
Thank you.
Just a couple of questions myself. What is your membership numbers, please?
It's in the proposal there. It's near the back, Roger. There. 243 is our current memberships.
Thank you. And just another, if this was to go ahead, where would you operate from while it's being built?
Yeah, we don't know. It's one of the things that we have. If it goes ahead, we will probably get Core Steel to build it. They're the ones that we've had the estimate from to build the hall. And they have indicated that there is an interest from them to buy it. Now, our current site. The key word is buy it, not steal it. We would be negotiating, if we can, to use our current hall until a new one is built. Now, if that could happen with the ones building the hall, it would be fairly easy. Yeah, there's a lot of things there that we've got to work out. All right?
You know, obviously, I'm just highlighting it as one of the issues you'll have. Is there any other questions? Councillor Crystal.
You say it's got Hawke's Bay Indoor Bowls. So are you the only indoor bowls club in Hawke's Bay?
Sorry, it's not a club. It's an association,
Okay.
and the clubs make up the association.
Okay.
So there would be there's 15 different clubs that make up the association.
Okay.
But the association runs the tournaments and rec matches and that sort of thing.
hall and that.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. So there's an indoor bowls club in Hastings and other places.
Hastings has only got three, isn't it now?
Three.
And then there's some in Central Hawke's Bay, Waipawa, Takapau. So, yeah, it's like a lot of sports where we are genuinely struggling, and one of the issues is our hall. People complain it's cold, and we play in the winter.
Okay, any further questions?
Just for me, sorry. Through you, Mr. Chair, do we know where this might go, this suggestion, in terms of it coming in front of us again or being investigated? Is there a process, a path
Yes.
we might be following?
So Debbie Stewart will be dealing with it, and providing everything stacks up, a paper will come back to council. Yeah. Thank you.
Sorry, just one other thing. When you were saying before about where would be operating from while it was being built, we basically only operate from April through to September, so we would have 6 months where we weren't necessarily operating if the sale did go ahead straight away and we couldn't have access to it.
Okay. Cool.
And also on that, if someone not involved with the building was to buy it, say a developer, they've probably got 6 months of drawing plans and development before they want it. So we would have to negotiate use and that, and you know, really that comes down to how long's a piece of string, who wants to buy it, what they're offering.
Okay, there's lots of options there for you anyway.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much for your presentation, and we'll be in touch with you.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thanks. Sorry, if I could just say one last thing. It would tend to free up quite a large section of land in the industrial area in Onikawa, where, from what we understand from the real estate agents, there's quite a shortage of land there.
Thank you.
All right.
Thanks very much. Okay, any announcements by the Mayor?
Yes. Before we do that, through the chair, are we able to remove our masks if there's no members of the public?
Yes.
Just make it a little bit easier for any online viewers too.
Now,
Question, actually.
Thank you.
very sound effective, my mask there. Right.
Good morning, everyone. Just wanting to give a brief update with regards to the Three Waters reform, which is currently underway. Our submission will be going to central government today. And as everybody here in Napier knows, water and water quality is our number one priority. We understand firsthand here in Napier and Hawke's Bay how important water quality is, and therefore we're taking a leadership role in our proposal to central government to look at an alternative regional model for our Three Waters delivery. So we agree there is a case for change due to the increasing costs to meet the higher regulatory standards. But we've done the work locally, we've analysed the data, and we know the Hawke's Bay model can achieve the economies of scales required whilst retaining local voice and local ownership. We know this issue is of high interest to our community. I'd like to say a huge thank you to everybody that has been in contact with us about this over recent weeks, in particular this week with the initiative undertaken by the Taxpayers Union. So we have had several hundred emails over the last couple of days, and thank you for people that have taken the time to do that and communicate your thoughts and concerns with us. So we, as I said, will be making our submission today, and as soon as we hear what the next steps are from central government, we will be ensuring to keep you updated as this process continues to roll out. And my second announcement today is that if you haven't already heard, we have crowned our new Penguin of the Year this morning, and I'm absolutely thrilled to say that Mo took out the title, finally. So, being the bridesmaid for the last, or the bride's, what's the male equivalent of a bridesmaid, for the last 3 years, and he finally took out the title with a landslide win of 69% of the votes. So I popped down to visit him this morning, but actually all of the penguins were being very camera shy and refusing to come out of their burrows. But yeah, fabulous to see Mo take out the win today, and I'm sure there'll be lots of happy people out there that voted for him. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't have any announcements other than say I've had my 2 vaxes and I'm the biggest sook in New Zealand with needles. So if I can do it, anyone can.
Yay.
Right.
Well done.
Any notifications of mine and matters? No, I think, yeah. Announcements by management. Russell, can you give us a rundown on Three Waters?
Yeah, thank you. So we've got just some quick project updates that in the water space that's been going on. A couple of councillors attended a site visit in the Whitecliff Street project. We're looking, it's quite an innovative solution for rehabilitation, where we've got a internally lining sewer pipe. So basically we don't need to open trench the sewers. And it saves on traffic management costs and rehabilitation costs. Unfortunately, it's not fit for purpose for all renewal projects. So where sewer pipes are dipped, it won't fix the dip. So it's not economic to do that. So we can't just, whilst it's a good solution, it's not fit for every solution. So every example, sorry. Also the fire main project's underway. We're starting in the Bayview area, Onehunga Road. So looking at future-proofing our network in that regard with the firefighting capacity and demand. So it helps meeting the growth requirements of our city. This project is funded through the water reform project package we got from central government. And so yeah, that's kicking off. The other project, the Thames Street water take, it's a project where we're reducing our risk to our water supply with regards to getting our hydrant users off our network at large, where there's a risk of backflow risk, and where we've got contractors utilising hydrants all over the city, and we've got them onto a purposely built site with backflow prevention. So this is one of our water safety plan projects identified and agreed with the Department of Health, and it's one of our key projects for moving into that into those protecting the network for a chlorine-free network as we go forward. The low manganese water source project. We're looking at the development of the A2 bore and the drilling of a new bore, which we've dubbed A3. And we're also planning on an additional bore in the Taradale area. We're planning for in the Guppy Road Reserve area. So honours have been successful in that tender. And they're looking to start by the end of October into that start drilling and site prep in that Awatoto site area. The planned finish or completion date is in April next year for that bore site. So we're looking to replace the A1 and C1 bores with the elevated manganese. So to then remove that discoloration problem at source for our city. So we've also recently started our the annual water cleaning program. So we've had very low complaints this year. So I believe in the month of September we've had 9. So of discoloured water complaints. So and the depot staff have been working through the September month. So it's good news there. So the Mataruho Reservoir, just a quick update. The purchase of the old Hospital Hill site and obviously the massive opportunity it provides council there. We're looking at. We've had a few issues with just unwanted access to that site and some concern with the neighbours. So we're looking at fencing off the site and providing some, whilst some gates, but some security, some lights and the likes, and so but also offering an availability for council to potentially provide events on that site or some sort of activity before the construction of a reservoir. So there's but the main thing there is to secure the site and make sure it's safe and secure for the neighbourhood there. So just during lockdown, just to note that it has been utilised as an exercise and a dog walking area. So even in its current state, it has been utilised by the local neighbourhood, which is good to see. So. Sorry, quick update there.
Thank you. Do we have any questions?
No, cool.
Must have covered everything.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Can I have confirm confirmation of minutes for Thursday 19th of August as a true and accurate record of the meeting? Have a mover, please. Councillor Simpson, seconded Councillor Bristol. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. On to agenda items. Item 1, Thames Tyne Annual Report Summary. And we've got Cameron.
One and only.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, Your Worship, councillors, ladies and gentlemen. This report is just an information report operationally to inform you and be transparent with our work programme for environmental initiatives throughout the city. This is a summary of the annual environmental report that we write to the Hawke's Bay Regional Council to provide them with an assessment, a self-assessment of our levels of compliance with the resource consent that authorises contaminated stormwater to be discharged into Te Whanganui Orotu, the Ahuriri estuary, from the two waterways that convey stormwater from the Pandora industrial area known as the Thames and Tyne waterways. Over the reporting period, we were informed of or proactively found 6 pollution events within those waterways, which we responded to as normal process. That is approximately the same amount as the previous year. Water quality relationship between rainfall and zinc has been improving over that reporting period compared to other years, which is good to see. However, the magnitude of that still doesn't get us below the limitations that we seek to achieve. So particularly for zinc, which is the key contaminant in that catchment, we exceeded the guidelines by in many of the November samples and in every June sample that we took. E. coli is another contaminant that we look at in that area. We did 32 samples in November and did not exceed the upper E. coli threshold value, which was good to see. That was in the November monitoring. However, it did exceed some in the June monitoring. Additional different types of monitoring were carried out, which I referred to in the report. And a good news story was that we found an increased population of tuangi, the New Zealand cockles, within the estuary proper where the Thames and Tyne waterways discharge to. So the fact that those populations are coming back is positive news. However, that assessment was carried out prior to the big acid spill that we had, which likely affected any re-establishment that we had achieved. Pollution incidents do continue. We have provided reports to you in relation to all of the proactive work we're doing over and above what the resource consent requires, to which this report refers. And the project work that is underway in that area to re-establish, reinvigorate and reduce the amount of legacy contaminant within the sediments of those waterways and make that an asset for the city. So that's a summary of that report as it has been submitted, and we will find the Regional Council's assessment on that report probably in the next couple of months, and I'll report back to this committee on those findings.
Thank you, Cameron. I have a question first up. I'm a bit confused about the fact that the Regional Council can allow water to go into our system at a lesser standard then we're allowed to let it go out at the other end into the estuary. Is that true?
Through Mr Chair, there are a couple of instances around the city where the Regional Council have authorised third parties to discharge to our waterways, and that's correct in this instance where a third party has been given authorisation to discharge to our waterways at a lesser quality value than we have to withhold at our discharge point. So that means that we have to uphold a certain standard of the water being discharged to the estuary, but there is already an authorisation outside of our control upstream of that, which enables dirtier water to be pumped into it.
I'll leave it at that. Deputy Mayor Brosnan.
Thank you, Cameron, for your report. And Mr Chair, if you'd allow me, I just have a number of things I'd like to get straight, so I have a number of questions. Thank you, Cameron. It was really good to see the levels of E. coli and zinc kind of trending down over time. I think that's a real credit to the work that you and your team are doing. Couple of questions so I can get my head around it. Do we have a limit in our consent for those contaminants, for instance, zinc, that we're trying to meet, or do we have a decreasing, say, percentage over time that we're aiming to meet? How's the consent measured?
Through Mr Chair, that's a very, very good question. There isn't a limit as such. The resource consent required the establishment of a catchment management plan. So we have developed that catchment management plan with approval of the Regional Council. Within that catchment management plan, levels that are well known around Australia and New Zealand have been utilised, and they are guideline values with upper and lower limits, and we're trying to achieve the lower limits on those through our monitoring, and everything else that we're trying to do within the catchment.
Can I just ask you a question of clarification about that? Sorry, Cam. Sure. So in our catchment management plan, we've got an upper and a lower limit. If we meet zinc levels within that, we would be compliant with our condition of our consent to meet our catchment management plan. Would that be correct?
So the catchment management plan's been developed as a more detailed approach to monitoring, measurement and improvement than the resource consent allows. So it's almost over and above by itself. If we exceed those limits, then there is a risk that we could be non-compliant with the consent based on what people are putting into those waterways that the council is conveying through that discharge point. So yes, we could be non-compliant from that based on those guideline values. They are guideline values, not consent limits.
And those have, through you, Mr Chair, those have been developed with us and we believe those are achievable over time. Otherwise we wouldn't have obviously accepted those conditions.
That's true, yes.
Okay, thank you. I note in your report, and you mentioned it in your verbal briefing as well, around the acid spill. I'm conscious that has hit the media, I think, this week around the prosecution, and I was just interested in an update on our role in that.
Through Mr Chair, yes, I believe it's in all national newspapers today. We've carried out a significant investigation in relation to that. We were first responders on the day, along with the Regional Council. We gathered evidence of that discharge, and we worked tirelessly with the fire service on that day to initiate a decontamination process, whilst we responded by trying to vacuum out as much of the contamination as we possibly could. Evidence was gathered into the night. I think I got home at about 1:10 the following morning following that, and we have collated all of that into notes and involved the Regional Council. They have taken over the charging of that, and we will fully support them and collaborate with them, and they will be utilising a significant amount of our evidence to address that particular incident.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. I think it's a really good collaboration example there. Obviously noting that I think the Regional Council have much greater ability to prosecute than we do under our bylaw.
Through Mr. Chair, they have much greater penalties available to them by law than we do.
Thank you. Sorry, just a couple more. You mentioned that we'll be getting our compliance grading in the next couple of months. Is that an annual or is that a 6-monthly grading?
It's annual.
An annual, thank you. And the last question kind of spins off the Chair's question around those third-party discharges into the network. My question is, have we as a council written to Regional Council requesting that they review those third-party consents? I understand they're able to do that in May of any year. And have we made that formal request?
Through Mr. Chair, we aren't aware of all of them yet. We are aware of this particular one that discharges into the Thames network. Not all resource consents can be reviewed in May every year. Some of them are select years. A formal request as such has not been made, but we have been in communication with their compliance team in relation to this particular instance. But we are also interested in finding where that might have implications elsewhere in our combined or our own stormwater networks.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I suppose just to further on that point, this is something that I think we see pop up in an ongoing way, that conversation around third-party discharges into our network at a lesser quality than what we're required to output. And I just wonder, I know you said we're not aware of them all yet. I wonder if that's our role to find, spend the time to find them all. We obviously aren't the holders of that information, and just signalling that it would be, from my perspective, really good to see a bit of a pathway to us making that formal request and having the Regional Council do that work to identify where there are discrepancies between the quality outcomes that are imposed through our consent versus third parties going into our network, and that it would be really good if there could be a bit of thought around a pathway to making that request and getting that on the radar.
Okay, noted. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
That was the further step I was going to take with them. Good idea.
Well
Yeah. Thank you.
Question,
Okay,
please,
any other
Mr. Chair?
questions, please?
Yes, please, Mr. Chair.
Councillor Tupper.
Thank you for that report, Kim. So mine is an extension of, my question is an extension of what you've presented, and that's around those work streams that we have, particularly in our environmental space, where we share responsibility and an opportunity to monitor or control those spaces, such as our open drainways. Is there in our system anywhere a list or a schedule of activities that we're doing with HBRC in those spaces? And is there any way of making the progress on those more visible to us at this level so that we get an understanding of how we're working with our regional regulator and what progress we're making on key issues? Have we got anything internally already?
Through Mr. Chair, yes, there's a series of projects that are well underway and are planned over the next 30 years in relation to waterway quality and monitoring. The Thames Tyne, part of the old Te Taukuri riverbed, and Saltwater Creek are the only waterways that Napier City Council actually has full ownership of. We have not worried about that, and the plan for the 30 years is over all of the waterways throughout the city, regardless of ownership. We have fully funded all of that, and we're getting additional staff on board currently to enable those works to be carried out. And I believe the Regional Council have a full-time staff member starting next month in relation to assisting us with that.
So, thank you for that. So the scheduled range of work, which is well aware that we're just through the LTP process, so it's good to be cognizant of those. But is there any way to make those particular work streams more visible at this level?
Yes, there is. Yep, we're just creating 90-day plans at the moment, and those will be available to make that more visible. We haven't had the chance to celebrate some of the good stuff we're doing because we've been fairly busy doing it. But that is a key part of what we're trying to arrange in the next steps.
Thank you, Kim.
Councillor McGrath.
Just through the chair, throughout the year, there were 6 incidences. Have there been any consequences given to us by the likes of the regional council, prosecutions or anything, other than just the fact that we've got to clean it all up and prevent it from happening again?
Through you, Mr. Chair, not in relation to those 6 incidents. We were being investigated in relation to the acid spill in February, but the regional council decided that the culpability lay elsewhere. The other incidents, it's part of our normal procedure to call the regional council if we are the ones that get that call initially. We mobilise to site, and on the way we're calling them to get their pollution officers there at the same time. So we're working really collaboratively around how those responses are initiated, and that shows full credibility in the way that we're trying to manage such an incident.
Thank you.
Any other questions? So do I have a mover and seconder for the officer's recommendation? Deputy Mayor Brosnan, seconded by Councillor Simpson.
No further, no.
Nothing further? Anybody got any comments? So all those in favour of the officer's recommendation, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. Thank you, Cameron.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you all.
Item 2, capital program delivery. John Kingsmith.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Chair. I'll try and hit the highlights on the basis that I'll take the report as read. So further updates on capital program. We've got a pretty big program ahead of us, so we're looking at a number of improvement initiatives to streamline our process and optimise our work. And I've given a similar to the previous cycles reports, some insight into the number of projects across the different activities attached to the report. Thought it might be worth mentioning a couple of initiatives going to market right now. We have gone to through a public process, a tender process, seeking a panel of technical engineering services that is being tendered at the moment, and we've also just identified to the market a future procurement opportunity where we're looking to pull together another panel for project management services. So just looking to augment our capacity in the delivery space across the infrastructure directorate to support primarily our Three Waters projects, but also any other project to which we have on the books this year and future years. We'll, in the near future, be working with those activities to look at how we might bundle up projects and potentially go to market with multiple projects and potentially across multiple years. And as I mentioned, we've got looking at our tools and systems and processes to be able to further upskill our people across the organisation around program delivery. A couple of interesting points that are becoming aware to us right now with regard to the capacity within our industry with our airport wastewater pump station program of work. We were notified by a tenderer of price increases during the period of the tender process. So that was a reasonably significant increase in cost on one item that it had hit our contractors in the period of submitting their tender and prior to tender award. And that's an indication of what is happening across the industry in a number of different components of construction. We understand that GIB has a 3-month back order now, and some of our plumbers and drain layers are struggling to get certain pipes and fittings. So there's a lot of pressure on the market right now, which will have implications on delivery timeframes for us and anyone else involved in the industry. So I thought that was worthy of a mention. I guess those are the high points. Take any questions on any of the tables or any of that information or any projects.
Any questions? Councillor Tapani?
Greetings. John, my question is actually an extension of some of the comments you've made around particularly our capacity to meet supply and demand in a changing market, especially under COVID. I'm looking for clarity and whether or not there's some plan already in play for us. So our procurement policies pre-COVID would have dealt with a reliable source of manufacturer to market supplies. Post-COVID, some of those supplies may be interrupted if they're not locally based. So the delays to our supplies, are they a result of external markets struggling under a COVID situation, or is this more a matter of internal markets under huge demand domestically? And we'll just... What I'm asking is, have we changed our policy and practice to adjust for COVID impacts to enable more local market solutions which might be outside of our policy with regards to what resources we use in infrastructure? Or are we sticking with our pre-COVID policy direction in a post-COVID world? So how are we mitigating those demand interruptions? Nice, simple question. Sorry, John. I know it's out left field.
Yeah, that's a good question, Councillor Tapani.
Would you like to come back to me?
No, well, I may have to, but I'll see if I can answer that now, and it may be that we need to do a little bit more thinking about that. But I think the time it takes to review and update a policy is quite a length of time, and there's a lot of effort that went into updating our current procurement policy, working in the wellbeings, working in our progressive toolkit approach to procurement. So I think that the philosophy and the approach that we have to procurement should be sound enough in our current COVID impacted environment. It's perhaps how we might approach how we share risk with our suppliers and our contractors around material supply, particularly when it might impact on timeframes within the delivery of a project or supply of goods and services. And so we're better to take a shared risk model in that regard and recognise that it's not really the procurement policy that is having that impact, but things that are somewhat outside of our control when it comes to supply of goods and services. When it comes to, is it internal markets or external markets, I think it's both. Certainly, with regard to specifically GIB, most of that's produced out of Auckland. Workers weren't able to work during lockdown. Unfortunately, that's my understanding. It may not be entirely accurate, but that's created a bit of a gap in the production of GIB, and therefore it's now a backlog.
Filtering through.
Yeah. So that's one example of an internal market. Where there's a lot of pipe that's manufactured in New Zealand, either Auckland or elsewhere, and so there's that much work on that. That forward work order book is pretty full with regard to that production. Equally, we have products that come from overseas that are impacted by COVID and other events. Yeah. So hopefully that's answered your question. Some of that's entirely out of our control. I don't think we need to revisit our procurement policy now, but as we develop our strategy, that helps us to roll out that policy and demonstrate what our maturity pathway is on our procurement policy journey. We may be able to take that into account as we move forward.
Thank you very much, John. I really appreciate that.
Comment?
Thank you. Through the Chair, just supplementary to the Director of Infrastructure and for the benefit of anyone who's listening online, when we're talking about things like the toolkit or the policy, what we're saying is we already really have a strong commitment to regional, i.e. local procurement, and the benefits that brings. So as John has already stated, to Councillor Tapani, we don't really need to review that. We already have a really strong regional commitment to procurement. Thank you.
Thank you.
Encouraging. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Brosnan.
Kia ora, John.
Kia ora.
Would just like to speak to you about an item on page 15 that's of particular interest, and it's the only grey one there. So it's the regional park, and I am interested, I suppose, in your team, if you could provide me an update on the progress towards identifying some of the space needed as part of that project. I understand a lot of work's required from the infrastructure team, and just making sure that that's actually wheels are moving in behind the scenes because the grey's got me a little concerned around a stop there for a project manager, whereas I think there's plenty of wheels that could be turning.
Sure. I may ask Russell to touch on some of the technical aspects of that question, and then we'll wrap back around it if that's okay. Richard may also like to contribute to the response here. Russell first. Russell's got the mic.
Thank you.
With you, Russell.
Sorry, yes, thank you. Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair. The staff are working on detailing the requirements of the stormwater facility, or the requirement for storage and out of the master planning and the other documents through the model. So part of that work here, we're gathering that technical requirement. So and we're feeding that into working with Richard and his team to help further scope that and move that project forward. So, yep. Just
Thank
to assure you, sorry,
So-
it's probably a gap in the reporting
Okay.
that we've just, and that's why it's probably grey. We haven't, our team probably hasn't updated the report for John's report in this committee, sorry.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you for that update. That gives me some confidence.
Russell, if I can ask you to hand them, or
Oh.
Steph, hand the mic to Richard, and if Richard would like to add to that.
Richard's been the gentleman. Through the chair, thank you. I just don't feel like I have too much to add other than to state, since the report was written over the last fortnight, we have been working on the program of how to bring some of these decisions back to council, and that's, as Russell has stated, why there is a small gap in the report that's been written. Fundamentally, what we're looking at here is, has already been stated by the Deputy Mayor, is the regional park, which has multiple benefits. One of them, of course, is what we do with our stormwater before it moves through the park. That is the work that Russell's working on now with respect to things like stormwater detention and stormwater polishing. Essentially, at the end of the day, at the moment, there is an asset that Napier City Council owns, Lagoon Farm, and we need to bring back to council what decisions need to be made with that asset to facilitate the benefits of the regional park. So, thank you. Cheers.
Just further to the report, when they are written, it's sometimes 2 or 3 weeks prior to the meeting, and it's something we're trying to address so that we're more up to date. So it is an issue that we have. Richard, did you have anything? You are such a gentleman.
We're thinking of coming to in a couple of next round, actually.
Before the end of the year, there will be a paper to council based on the asset, the Lagoon Farm asset. Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Right. Got a move and a second for the officer's recommendation to endorse the capital program. Councillor Simpson, seconded by Councillor Mawson. Do you wish to speak on that? Right. So all of those in favour of the recommendation, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you, John. And right, item 3, Lease of Reserve, and we're, Brian, there you are.
Good morning.
Dinner.
So this item seeks approval in principle only at this point to grant a ground lease to Omni Gymnastics Centre for the land at Onikawa Park, so incorporating both their current facility and footprint plus provision for an 18-metre extension. So we're just seeking approval in principle at the moment. Pursuant to the Reserves Act, this matter will have to be publicly notified and then brought back to council with any objections or whatever's been received during that notification period. So we're just approving in principle at the moment, public consultation, then back, and then of course there's a requirement with regard to the extension to satisfy all the resource consent and building consent requirements. But we're required,
until they get legal tenure of the land, they can't, of course, go ahead and apply for resource consent or funding. So this is really just a first step in that process. So, take any questions. We've tried to explain here the benefits of the extension and what have you, why they need the extension. They've provided information there.
Thank you. Do I have any questions? Councillor Tapani.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. This may be directed at both Brian and Councillor McGrath. I remember this coming before council some time back, and one of the key questions we asked was around consultation with directly impacted residents in or near the proposed changes, and just, I note, nothing in the report speaks directly to that, so I would love some follow-up on that one.
They have spoken to residents. So this is the first step. So as part of the resource consent process, a requirement of a regulatory arm may be that they have to consult, so that will definitely come.
Well, and just from my understanding, when you talk about this being an agreement in principle, does that mean that it will eventually come back before council for a formal?
Absolutely. This is the first step.
Thank you.
Agreeing in principle, public notification with regard to the lease, then back to council.
Those are the only two questions I have, and I would love to see some confirmation of resident engagement throughout this process. I understand it will be part of the resource consenting process, which is optional, but if there is any ability to provide an emphasis in that space, it would be welcomed.
Yes, the centre is well aware of that, and they have started that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other? Councillor Bowe?
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. Brian, in terms of public consultation, I understand there's an advertisement goes in the newspaper. Do we touch on any other kind of media in order to get the word out? Because a lot of people get their news from other social media.
Yeah, we can do that. Yeah.
Cool, thank you.
Got a question?
Yeah.
Right,
I'll
okay.
second.
Councillor Mawson's happy to move that. Do you have a seconder?
Let McGrath do it.
Councillor McGrath, we'll let you second it.
Absolutely.
Right, do you want to speak on it? You're the mover, aren't you?
Yeah, he's moved.
You got, well,
He can reserve.
I'll let Councillor McGrath.
I'll let the chair decide.
where you go, Richard.
Go, Rich.
Thank you. Through the chair. Yeah, this has been a long time in the making for the club to expand. And yeah, when they first built the building, there was a lot of grief with the neighbours and conflict. I think things have changed. I think the club have gone out and spoken with the neighbours, and they will have obligations when they go through the consenting process. But what I would say, and this is a club that solely produces a sports facility for Napier. It's not a club rooms, it's not a clubhouse, it's not a social place where they sit around and have beers and watch the rugby. Solely provides a sports facility for us. So one of the questions that runs through my head and moving into the future is perhaps how can we help this club achieve what they want to achieve? As part of what they've presented to us today, they have to do all sorts of landscaping and pathways to get things through. And as a council, we'll actually inherit those and be the ones who are maintaining it all into the future, the outside of all of this in our reserve. So I'm thinking, and I just want to start a conversation of how we can assist the club into the future with perhaps helping them out and saving them some dollars. If we were to take over the landscaping side of it for them, as we'll be the ones who inherit it, and the rest of the community will be the ones that actually benefit from it. And also, there was a bit of grief in the early days when the club was supposed to do all their outside work, and it never eventuated, and half it did. Perhaps it would give them a little bit more assurance if the council was to take over that role and planted the right trees in the right place and had it all sorted. So just putting that forward, and fully support the proposal.
Thank you. Any
I'll be
other
going in a minute.
comments?
Yeah, I'll be going. I'll leave it there.
Mayor Brosnan?
Just very briefly, I know that Bob and the team have worked really hard to understand what I think is quite a complex relationship with council in this space. So not only are we obviously the regulator when they go through any development, but we're also the owner of the land. So there's a lease situation there, and I think it's really good, Brian, in your paper that you've set out that this is just in our capacity as the lessor of the land, giving that in principle agreement to the extension of the ground rent, which really gives them some certainty to work through the next stages of their plan. So I congratulate the club and council for giving them that certainty and making this first step. So thank you.
Thank you. So would you like to speak as the mover, and then you can give your right of reply at the same time?
Sure. Just to echo what my two colleagues have said over there, but also, I mean, it's a, if this place wasn't there, it'd be a massive void that Napier would have for our youth. It's an outstanding facility, and the people there are really passionate about what they do, and I think it's brilliant. Thank you.
No right of reply?
Mr. Chair, can I ask one more question of staff?
Yes.
Brian, I'd love to, and it can be offline, I'd rather not have an answer on the online forum, but could I touch base with you, or could you email me around whether or not the Omnigym and their directors are cognizant or have access to our latest geotechnical information that is specific to the Unikawa site? I know that we've done a couple of tests and investigations in that area. Are they aware of the latest data in that space?
They are certainly aware that that is happening. I can't confirm today whether they have received any information back. They're certainly aware that that is happening.
Council hasn't received it yet.
And geotech issues will be taken into account during the consent process.
Okay.
Yep.
Thanks, Brian.
Thank you.
Just reminded by the Deputy Mayor that we actually haven't got it yet either. Okay, any other comments? So all those in favour of the officer's recommendation, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. And I'll close the Sustainable Napier and move to the future Napier Committee meeting. Deputy Mayor Brosnan.